We're all welcome in Jesus' name. For those joining us physically and also those joining us online, we're all very welcome. Today promises to be a very, very interesting day. We're going to be learning so much about communication, as it has been said over and over to us even before today. We'll be learning, and then we'll be unlearning the things that we know about communication. Lots of times we believe and we think that, oh, what I have said or what I have told this person, the person has understood. But then the reactions or the results that we get from what we say is totally different from what we're expecting. And that just says one thing, that we have not communicated effectively. So, with that being said, today we'll be learning not just about communication, we'll be learning what public speaking is, we'll be learning how to tell a story also while we are communicating, so that at the end of the day, or at the end of a conversation, or at the end of whatever deal we're trying to broker, or whatever message we're trying to pass, we get our desired result, which is the purpose of any form of communication. Lots of times, and my husband, we have some arguments, and he'll be like, "You're not communicating properly." I said, "But I've said this." He said, "It's beyond what you say. It's also your body language." So it just makes me understand that, see, even if you are talking, you might be saying one thing, but then what your face is saying is totally different. Or you can even be over the phone and you're saying something, you're intending something in your mind, but what the other person is hearing is totally different. But today we're going to be understanding how we should construct our sentences, the choice of words that we're going to be using, and all of that. So let me not take too much of your time. I'm going to be welcoming the first speaker for the day, in the person of in fact, he's one of us. He's someone that we know. He's a technology entrepreneur. He has over 7 years of experience in startup and SME business development, building over 400 businesses within Africa, France, UK, and the US. He is passionate about building brands, passionate about the boy child, passionate about, in fact, he's so passionate about so many things that I saved his name on my phone as Passion. He's a very passionate young man. He's so passionate. He's so passionate, right? He's also a very skilled public speaker, a voiceover artist, and also an event host. Please, with a resounding round of applause, let's welcome the person of David Ogebe.
Thank you. That was really funny, right? Passion. And truly, if you check her phone, you'd see my name saved as Passion. So to just shed more light on that word passion, there is a business deal that we got at the company that was received solely based on passion. The feedback we got was, "I like his passion, and so I'll give it to him." So passion is necessary. It's part of the emotions we'll be looking at today in communication. Thank you very much for that introduction. I'm really excited to be here today sharing this discussion and conversation with all of us, physically and online. It is an amazing opportunity, and I promise, I guarantee, it's going to be one of the most interesting 45 minutes of your time this year. So the meeting is going to take 45 minutes for the presentation and 15 minutes for questions and answers. But if you have questions in the course of the conversation, you can stop me and I'll answer the questions. All right, we're ready to start and we're good to go. Just a moment. So I'll start by saying this, that we live in a world today that is largely influenced by three things. One of them, what we see, what we hear, and then how we feel. If you're able to influence these three things, then you'll be able to drive impact and then change the world to the standards that we want to see them today. I'll give us two cogent reasons why the art of communication is very important. Number one, which concerns the church and a larger audience. Our audience has grown bigger. I'll take that again. Our audience has grown bigger, and I'll explain. In the past, speaking on such a topic in such a session like this, the maximum we could get is maybe 50 people seated in this hall. Then if you have a technical team that is very productive, they go ahead to produce 100 CDs. And that's as much as the message can travel. But today, in addition to the 50 people capacity we can have in this hall, you have maybe another 30 people that will join the Zoom call. And then when this message is uploaded on YouTube, you can reach an unlimited number of people. Thousands of people can join this conversation when it's uploaded on YouTube. So somebody can simply type the art of public speaking on YouTube or Google and stumble on this message. So our audience as individuals, as business people, as a church has grown larger. Which brings me to the second cogent reasons. As the audience has grown larger, so has attention span reduced. Am I correct? So that's to say, experts have researched and have told us that, look, you need to grab someone's attention within the first 2 to 5 minutes. If you're not able to capture their attention within that timeline, you would have lost the essence of that discussion. Some will argue to say 30 seconds. So now the question is, how do we get our message to cut through this noise, to cut through these distractions, to reach the wider audience, and to preserve the value that we're trying to transmit to the wider audience? Hence, techniques of exceptional communication. But today, I'll be focusing on the art of public speaking, and with that, we'll talk about other elements of public speaking and communication, which includes language clarity, feedback as catalysts. As we go through it, we'll learn a lot. We'll learn a lot about body language, how to use the platforms, how to use the stage, how to prepare, how to practice properly. There's a way you can practice, but in the end, you wouldn't be able to get the desired results because you probably have not practiced properly. So as we move to the next slide, there's something I like to do in most of my discussions and my trainings. I call it the mood check-in. Next slide, the mood check-in. Just to know how the emotions are in the room. How do we feel today? You feel good? You can say it. How do you feel? Good? You feel happy? Excited? Great. If you're online and you can hear my voice, you can just type in your comments. You feel blessed? You feel happy? You feel good to be here. Let's just have the conversations going on. And while we're at it, I'd like to engage us a bit. I like engagements a lot, right? Yes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to describe a scenario to you. I'm going to ask you to tell me what that scenario is using one word. Is that okay? I'll try to be as clear as possible, all right? So here's a scenario. A big, luxurious ship on an ice-cold ocean, wrecked and broken in two. And then thousands of people are stranded in chaos, crying for help, dialing SOS and emergency calls. And at the same time, on that ice-cold ocean, there are two people. One is staying afloat, just holding on to life on a raft, while the other is sinking and losing his life gradually. Who can tell me what that scenario is? One word. It's a movie. Sorry? Someone said Titanic. Any other answers? So, can you give him the mic? He said?
Titanic.
Titanic. Okay, any other answers? Okay. So that is Titanic. That's the movie Titanic. That's like one of the scenes in the movie Titanic, right? And for you to be able to get that, you're able to picture the scene You saw the sheep wrecked. You saw thousands of people stranded, crying for help. Now that brings me to my definition of public speaking, which is in the next slide. Public speaking is the skill of using words to paint vivid pictures in the minds of your listeners. I'll take that again. It's a skill of using words to paint vivid pictures in the minds of your listeners. So think of yourself as an artist with a paint, a brush, and a canvas, painting a picture for your audience to see in their minds that will be memorable, such that when they leave the hall, when they leave your place, when they leave the board meeting, they keep thinking about what you've said. And whatever you've said is enough to drive an action, to drive change. That's what public speaking is all about. I have an alternative definition. It's not uploaded there. But public speaking is the art of turning ideas, statistics, numbers, and facts into a memorable story. For those that want to use statistics in the boardroom to tell a story for a new product or a new idea, that's also a public speaking setting. So that being said, there are a few people who have been able to paint vivid pictures in the minds of thousands and millions of people up till date. Let's have the next slide. It's also an engagement slide. If you know any of these guys up there, you can also let the mic go around and then you tell me their names and any of the speeches you remember. Any of their names and any of the speeches. We have a hand up.
I can see Martin Luther King.
MLK Jr.
Speech.
Yes.
I have a dream.
I have a dream. I have a dream. Excellent. Excellent. I'll clap for you. MLK Jr. I have a dream. So we have another person, a very popular man, the former president of the United States. He also has a very popular speech. Who can remember that speech? Audacity. Yeah, something like, to paraphrase, yes. Barack Obama, one of his most popular speeches. If I mention it now, we'll all know. But I'll give one more chance. Okay.
Yes, we can.
Oh, yes. Barack Obama. Yes, we can. He made a speech and then it was driven by, a reassurance that, yes, we can. Yes, we can do this. And then one of my favorites, though he's late now, Miles Monroe, an exceptional public speaker, a great leader. And I remember him by one of his quotes, which I'll quote today. He says, "Don't die old, die empty." It means make sure you pour yourself out, all the value you have. Make sure you pour it out into others before you leave this earth. And one of the most funny characters, he's a Nigerian. We all know him. That's the last guy. He's a Nigerian politician. I gave an example of him sometime last week. Very interesting person. And one thing I discovered about this guy? I discovered that everything he says are correct and accurate, very complete and sound sentences he makes. But the problem is he uses big grammar. He says a lot of jargons. And if you're not patient or diligent enough to go back and piece what he has said together, you will lose the essence of that whole discussion. There was a time I went and I saw a message or a speech he made about, is it chariots, ask the daughters of Askelon, and he just made some big grammars. And I realized it was a Bible verse he quoted. He said stuff like mene tekel ofasin, krinkum krankum. Put it in a sentence and you'll see that it makes absolute sense. But we don't want to be like him, to bamboozle our audience, give them exercise or homework to go and figure out whatever it is we're saying. We want to speak clearly for people to understand. But out of all these guys, out of all these people, MLK, Barack Obama, Miles Monroe, and our honorable, there is one person who has stood out. This year started with Guinness World Record. People breaking the Guinness World Record, cookathon, and everybody was. So I took the liberty to go and check who has the record of the longest standing ovation after a speech. Any idea who that is? No, amongst, as in the world, not just among these four. Whoa, that's a very good attempt. But very close, but not him. The record for the longest standing ovation after a speech. So I'll be glad to say you heard it first here, right? Narendra Modi, the former Prime Minister of India, in 2014, he gave a speech at Madison Square. And after his speech, the audience gave an ovation for 4 straight minutes. 4 minutes. Now, 4 minutes looks or sounds a bit little, but I want you to try clapping for 1 minute. And you see how stressful or tiring it is. But in the next slide, the audience applauded for 4 straight minutes, non-stop. And I'm not talking of 1,000 people. I'm not talking of 5,000 people. I'm talking of 18,000 people gave a loud ovation for 4 straight minutes. And he holds the world record for the longest standing ovation, Narendra Modi. He's the current prime minister now, exactly. He was, and he is currently the prime minister of India. And so I began to ask myself, what did Narendra Modi say that provoked such a response from an audience? I started to do my research. I started to check. And then I realized something that I'll share with you today. It's a secret, and if they know, they may fine me for it, but I don't mind. I realized something. The same structure of delivery that Narendra Modi had on that day is the same structure of delivery every great public speaker uses. From MLK to Barack Obama to Chris Oyakilome to Miles Monroe, they use the exact structure of delivery that I'm going to show you today. Next slide. I'll also put a caveat to say not all public speeches are marked by standing ovations. All right? Even though I want you guys to clap for me when I'm done. Maybe not for 4 minutes, maybe for 30 seconds. You can clap for me. But not all public speeches are marked by standing ovations. Some of them provoke tears. After a speech, you may experience pin drop silence in the hall. Then the next thing you see, handkerchiefs, people sobbing. While in some other cases, it is not complete until there's a handshake and signing of contract. If you like, clap from now till next week. If that contract is not signed, it is not considered successful. So this is the question today, and this is what we're going to be looking at. How do you structure your message as a minister, as a businessman, as an individual? How do you structure and position your message for good delivery? That your audience gets the right message and does the action required afterwards. So if you join me through this conversation, you'll find out. Okay, we're moving forward. And I'll summarize it in 3 key structures, 3 key pillars. Let me put it that way. 3 key pillars. Number 1, prepare. Number 2, practice. And number 3, perform. They sound like things we've known before, but we'll see the application differently. Prepare, practice, and perform. I'll say it for the last time. Prepare, practice, and perform. And as I say this thing over and over again, I remember a very funny story. Please permit me the liberty to share it with you, right? I remember a very funny story that happened, and it summarizes this whole scenario of preparation, practice, and perform. So when we were very young, I had a friend. His name was Ikechukwu. If you check the next slide, you'll see Ikechukwu. And then his mom called him and said, can we go to the next slide? His mom called him and said, Ikechukwu, buy me 5 pure water and 2 sugar. I know how children have a lot of, and he wanted to say, come, do you understand what I said? He said, yes. So what did I say? He said, buy me 5 pure water and 2 sugar. I said, yes. And he took his tire. As children, we had tires. Those were our Cadillacs then. And he started going. And he was going on the road. He was repeating what his mother said. 5 pure water and 2 sugar. 5 pure water and 2 sugar. 5 pure water. As he got to the second to the last, he said, fine pure sugar and 2 water. And then he eventually said, 2 pure sugar and fine water. And when he got to the front of the malam, he said, my mother said you should give me 2 pure sugar and fine water. The malam was like, 2 what? He said, 2 pure sugar and fine water. He said, who sent you? He said, my mother. He said, go back and get the message clearly. Please, let's not be like Ikechukwu. Did he prepare very well? He thought he did. Did he practice? Yes, he practiced very well, but he practiced wrongly. And he was carried away with distractions on the road. Did he perform at the end of the day? No. He tried, but it was a poor performance. So again, let's not be like Ikechukwu. I'm going to show us how not to be like Ikechukwu. All right? Let's look at the pillars of preparation. Now, this is very important. I'd like you to pay attention. If you're online, you can pay attention for a few minutes. These are the pillars of preparation. You ask yourself a couple of questions, 5 questions. The first question is, what is the message? We're talking about content. You want to package a document and send to the US. You put 2 envelopes here in Nigeria. What you want to ensure is that the 2 envelopes arrive the United States of America intact. What do I mean? You want the content you desire, what the message you want them to get, you want it to get to the listener as it is, intact, unadulterated. How do you prepare your content? Number 1, get a topic. Now, your topic can change as you progress, but resist the urge to let your audience figure out what the topic is. Always start with a topic. Your topic will guide you through your research as you go back and you start making researches, as you go back to start building your content, your points, as you go to get the stories that will back up the message, your content will guide you through that entire process. Are we together now? Always get a topic. Then the second thing you do is you research on your topic. One thing which we'll talk about much later is that good research, let's stay on that slide. One thing we'll figure out is that good research helps to build your confidence. It gives you ample information about that discussion, about that conversation. You do your research, there you can begin to cut irrelevancies. You can begin to cut off things that do not matter. You get a lot of content and streamline it to your topic. The aim is to ensure that what you intend your audience to get is what they get at the end of the day. If you're talking about salvation, let it be that your audience gets the message of salvation. If you're talking about repentance, let it be that the audience gets the message about repentance. If you're talking about a novel idea or a new product, let it be that at the end of the day, they recognize that what you have shown them is a novel idea. Do you remember that game? There's a game we play where we line up maybe 5 people, right? And then the first person whispers something to the second person. And he's supposed to whisper it on and on. And at the end of the day, when the message gets to the last person, and you ask him to say what the first person says, he says something completely different. Is that true? We remember that game. That's how it is sometimes. What the messenger intends gets diluted along the line. And what the last person or the end person gets is a completely different message. So let us try to preserve our content. Let us ensure that we stay in line with the topic, cut off all the unnecessary parts that do not matter. And then the next question you ask yourself is, who is this message meant for? Very important. Who is the message meant for? And by who, I mean age distribution, education, demography. Who is this message meant for? You know, if I'm talking to a room full of professors, how do I prepare or come talking to professors? Okay, for example, we gave an example of the honorable. If he's talking to professors with a big vocabulary and that grammar, they'll clap for him. They'll applaud him because he was using very sophisticated language. If I'm talking to a room full of teenagers, I have to speak their language. For example, if I'm talking to a room full of Gen Zs, and I want to describe this seminar, what do I say? Say, OMG, POV. This seminar is totally given, period. And they'll get it. That's how they speak. But if I'm talking to an advanced group, age group, I best come with a wealth of experience and show that I have done my research and I'm qualified to speak to them. So who you are talking to matters a lot. It helps you streamline your language. Now, it is very important to emphasize that one of the environments where we find a distributed group of people, different ages, different professions, is in a church. In a church, you find the young, the old, the ones who have been saved and are Christians for 30 years, the ones who are just born again. So the next question you ask me is, how do you streamline your message for this kind of audience? Especially in our setting. There is a midpoint. There is a balance. There is a way you prepare properly, structure your content to accommodate all age groups. And the way I look at it, you don't go too high in sophistication. The platform, the pulpit, is not the place to go so sophisticated. And you don't go too low that you lose a set of people. You stay at the average. Keep your vocabulary at minimum, such that you can carry everybody along. Are we together now? So we go to the next point. I don't want to spend too much time here because we have a lot to talk about. You ask yourself one more question. How will this message be delivered? Are you going to be making a presentation with PowerPoint slides just like I'm doing? Are you going to be standing and talking for 45 minutes without any support? Are you allowed to bring notes or postcards where you can just peep, get the next topic, and you flow? There are some people who are very skilled. They can just pick a heading and talk volumes about that heading. They pick another heading, talk volumes, while some other people need the aid of structured notes, teleprompters like our newscasters. So you ask yourself, how will this message be delivered? For the sake of this conversation, we're talking about public speaking, but in some cases, you'll be talking about podcasts. Am I going to be in a room in front of a camera? Am I going to be talking online, on Zoom? There are ethics that you need to apply throughout all these channels. And we'll talk about the ethics as we progress. But because we're talking about public speaking today, I'll show us later how we overcome one very great, which is stage fright. Where some people say, I'm afraid I can't talk to, I'll tell us a very funny story as we progress. All right? So we need to know how we are going to deliver our message. Ask the organizers, ask the people who you're working with to tell you what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. Then we move to the next point. I won't talk much about this. When and where. It talks about time and location. Does the message require urgency? If I'm talking to us today about how to make extra sources of income in Nigeria. It's a relevant and timely message. It will attract a lot of people because people want to know how. If I'm talking to men, married men, bachelors that are about to get married, and I say how to marry, how to have your dream wedding on a budget, men will flock to listen to me. Why? They want to know how they can marry on a budget. So ask yourself, when and where, time and location, does it require urgency? If I'm talking to people in a rural area, trust me, I wouldn't speak this way. I'll have to break down my English. How on a day? So very funny. I remember one time I was called to anchor an event in Benue State, far away. And these people were not my typical tribal people. They were from the other side. First of all, I'm not so familiar with my own language. And then the group of people were from the other side. How will I communicate with these people? So I quickly asked the person who invited me, how do you say this in this language? She told me, when you go to greet them, you say, Upandeve. And I went and I said, Upandeve. They responded, woo! I asked for another lingua, and then she told me, and I communicated with them. There are places you go to, locations you go to, that you need to understand their language. Let me not hit too much on this. Let's move to the next point, which is what everybody in the audience will be asking themselves. So you, as a public speaker, ask yourself, why is this message important? Remember, I started today by telling us why it is important. And it is a key question to ask yourself, because the moment you stand, no, let's not even say the moment you stand. The moment people see a flyer on a particular seminar, the first thing they ask themselves is, why should I be there? They start asking them, is it relevant to me? They keep asking why throughout the conversation. The moment somebody comes here to speak and gives a topic, whether we like it or not, in their hearts they say, why is he talking like this? Some people even go as far as saying, why is he dressed like this? Why is he moving? Why am I shaking my body like that? Wise, fill the room. And if you're able to answer directly or indirectly, they are wise, you would have been able to pass your message across successfully. So these are the pillars of preparation. You need to ask yourself these 5 questions. What, who, how, when, and where, and why. Another important part of preparation is, please dress well. Are we together? Dress well, no matter the occasion. There's a cliche that says you are dressed the way you dress. By all means, please dress well. And as we move to the next slide, I'll tell us, I have an in-law who, when he prepares for an interview, he does what that lady does. He stands in front of the mirror and he begins to practice. Hello, my name is XYZ. I'm here to... He prepares, he practices. He just talks to himself. He'll ask himself mock questions from the panel of interviewers and respond. Sometimes I think he's extreme. He even goes as far as wearing the exact same cloth he should wear on that day to feel comfortable in it. Do you know that sometimes you realize, oh, this is what I want to wear, for men, for example. And then when you wear that outfit on that day, you feel good. But when you get in front of the interviewers, the way you knot your tie will choke your neck. And the way fear will grip you. Your first word that comes out of your mouth will mean that this guy doesn't know what he's saying. So check if what you're wearing is comfortable for you. You need all the confidence in the world on that day to be able to deliver properly. So sometimes you need to stand in front of the mirror to practice. I didn't want to say practice makes perfect. I say practice, progress, and perfection. Through practice, you can transform imperfections into excellence and turn effort into mastery. I remember a movie I saw. There's a very strong character, Annalise Keating. She was to make a presentation in front of the Supreme Court for the first time. She was an experienced lawyer. She had won many cases, impossible cases. But for the first time, she was to appear in front of the Supreme Court. What did she do? A day to that hearing, she drove. She got to know the drive time to that place. She practiced. She got into the court. She felt the fabric of the curtain. She saw where the judges were going to sit. 7 mean-looking judges. She stood on the podium. She took a deep breath to just savor the moment. And then she was able to prepare adequately. Do you know, sometimes we don't know how the place will look. When we now go and see maybe a red curtain, and some of us have a problem with red, it will mix up everything in our head and we'll start getting confused. There are some places sometimes in the past, I didn't know what the stage would look like. I expected a big stage. And when you go there, they tell you, oh, sir, this is where you're going to stand, here. And then you'll be wondering what's going. Maybe the stage will even be shaking. You lose some atoms of confidence in that entire process. So practice. It involves visiting the place if you can, checking your drive time to know how long it's going to take, and arrive early. And let me tell you one other thing practice does that you do not know. It happens in the next slide. Okay, so I would like us to sing a song that we know together. Please, if you know this song, sing it with me. What shall I render unto Jehovah? For he has done so very much for me. Nara, 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 narekele. Perfect. So let's continue. You've done so much for me. Sing with me. I cannot tell it all. Okay, so the thing is, we know this song, right? How about this? You were good, you were kind, you were more than these. Lustful words, sing with me. Trying to describe you. No, you know it, sing it. Elohim. All right, that's what I was looking for. Alo Shelo, what? Okay. But you see, that's how we are when we do not practice. Think of a song, you know the lyrics very well. When you get to that part, nara, nara, you sing it with all your passion, nara, nara. Then you can begin to add emotion. You can add all your strength and passion. You know, my wife said my name is Passion. Then you can add all the passion to it because you know the lyrics. You know your slides. You know what you're supposed to say. You understand your message very well. Then you can begin to focus on the emotion you want to deliver. You can focus on how you want the message to be delivered. But when you don't know the song, that's how you begin to sound. Then you now come back to look at something. Okay, that's what it said. In that process, you drop some coins of confidence. And I quickly remember when we were in primary school, maybe primary one, pre-primary, thereabout. When we were singing the national anthem, we start singing, "How is your compassion?" When we get to serve, we'll sing it to serve with heart, and we'll sing it with passion, then the rest will chew our mouths throughout. Let us practice our slides very well. Let us know what is there. Let us understand what we have to say. It helps us deliver the message properly. And in the next slide, it talks about what to do to practice. It says, practice and perfect your voice, your tone, your pace, and your flow. Some of us don't know how we sound. I was telling my wife a funny story 2 days ago. The first time I heard my voice on radio, and they asked, David, who did that advert? I denied myself. Honestly, I didn't like the way I sounded. When I recorded in the studio, it sounded nice because of the monitors, the speakers, it was full. But when it played on radio, I did not like the way it sounded at all. I was like, is that me? Yes, that's how I sounded. I didn't know how my voice sounded until I did it, until I did that recording. Then I began to learn how to walk on my tone. And I'll introduce a concept to us today, which we all know. It's called our different voice archetypes. It means some people call it, they'll say, why you they change your voice? We all change our voices. Do you know? That's the truth. And the way I'm talking here, just imagine as I'm talking to you here now, and I come out and meet my wife. Hey, my wife, I love you so much. You're the best. It will sound unnatural. When I'm talking to her, I have to give her some soft tones. We all do it. Even the most serious man in the world, think of the man that doesn't joke or doesn't play. He has no atom of fun in his life. Bring a newborn baby to him. Tell him to go and play with that baby. The next thing you see, that man will go there and say, "Booja, booja, booja, play with me, the baby." Is that his voice? Yes, it is voice. But he has learned to manage his tone and suit it to the situation. There are times when you need the right tone to drive the right message. There are times when you need a louder tone. Just before I go for voiceovers, for any advert, there's a practice I do. Just to get the right tone. How am I doing with time? Okay. So there are times that we need to adjust our tone, our pace. And one of the ways, practical ways we can do it is we have smartphones, we have recorders. Take up your phone. Just the way we do with singing. Hit the record button and talk into it. Play it back and hear how you sound. Ask yourself, do you sound confident? Do you sound charismatic? Is your flow good or incoherent? Some people I had it a lot. In my conversations, I'll be talking and saying, you know. It's not bad, but it doesn't help coherence in your flow. And I'll show us how to substitute all those things. There's something we can do to help to gain coherence. Are we together now? Do you sound monotonous? Even the way we speak has a rhythm to it. There's some people that when they speak, you just like the way they flow. It sounds like music to your ears. But some other people, when they speak, some of us don't know. You should know basketball very well, right? You know Shaquille O'Neal. When Shaquille O'Neal is making an interview, and you ask him, where are you from? Say, I am from Nigeria. Like a robot is talking. He says, when did you start playing basketball? I started playing basketball when I was a kid. It sounds like a robot, but that's the way he sounds. And we only listen to him because he's an NBA superstar and he can dunk. These are the things we need to check when we record. These are the things that we do when we want to practice, when we want to get the right tone to be able to deliver the message. And I'll wrap this part of practice up by quoting Malcolm Gladwell's rule. It's called the 10,000 hour rule. Have you ever heard of the 10,000 hour rule? Malcolm Gladwell, he wrote a book called The Outliers. And he gave this rule. He says it takes 10,000 hours of intensive practice to achieve mastery of complex skills and materials. We may think, starting from now, we have to start counting the hours. But no. Right from when we're born, there are certain things that we've been doing. Some of the hours, and we've become masters of it. Unfortunately, some people have become masters of anger. Why? Because they've been practicing it right from when they were younger. And they'll tell you, that's the way I am. There are some people who have practiced, let's give, for example, Bill Gates, right? He didn't just erupt as the CEO of Microsoft. He spent hours while his mom was on the board of IBM, so he had access to unlimited hours in programming and networking of computers. And that's when he began to build that skill that has ultimately turned him to the entrepreneur that we know him to be today. So if you want to gain mastery in any skill, Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour rule comes to play. Now, there are things that you've practiced in your life for a very long time. All you need to do is clock 10,000 hours and you become a master of it. You can do that when it comes to public speaking. Are we together? Any questions so far before we proceed? All right. So please, remember I said if you have questions, feel free to ask me. And then we'll proceed to the last pillar of preparation. What's the last pillar of preparation? Can we say it together? Perform. Perform. You know, when you prepare, when you practice, it becomes absolutely nothing if you do not perform it very well. Remember my story of Ikechukwu, right? Let us ensure that we perform when we get there. If you see the slide, you see, I'll tell you the story. That was me campaigning for the position of assistant head boy in primary school. So I'll tell you the story, right? When I was in primary 6, the way it was done in our school, MIS, if you want to become a prefect, you'll be nominated, and then you'll have to campaign like politicians. So I was selected, shortlisted to be a prefect, and the campaign was meant to be on a Friday. So I went home, told my mom, who was a very good writer, and then she gave me my manifesto. I wrote it down. You know, wake me up from sleep throughout that week. Campaign, say, hello, my name is David Ogebe. I'm from primary 6A. I'm here to campaign for the position of assistant head boy. Pra, pra, pra. If you vote for me, the toilets will be clean, blah, 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 blah. I could say it sleeping anytime. And I was happy. Friday morning, you know, neat with my stockings, with my friends. Can I see your speech? Everybody was hiding their speech. I said, problem, I hid my speech. Went. And then everybody spoke. And next thing I heard, campaigning for the position of assistant head boy. Welcome on stage, David Ogebe. Woo! And then I came on stage. And then I, rehearsed. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, principals, pupils of MIS Primary School. My name is David Ogebe. I'm here to compete for the position of assistant head boy. Bloop. It was like they flashed light in front of my eyes. Everything in my head flew like a bird. When I looked, I saw thousands of eyes looking at me. Some were smiling, some were frowning, some were... I was confused. Occasionally, one or two words would just fly into my head. I'll talk. Bloop. Then the next thing to disappear. Bloop. It was like a computer that was hanging. And the next thing I heard, time up. And then I came down. It was a disaster. A complete disaster. Was it the fault of me not preparing enough? No. Did I practice? Yes. So you can do stage 1 perfectly. You can do stage 2 excellently. But when you miss stage 3, then you've missed everything, which means perform. What happened to me that day? It's a very popular thing that happens to everybody, even to the most renowned speakers. It's called stage fright. The nerves. Before you come up stage, your heart starts to palpitate. Some people say, I'm shy. No, you're not shy. Well, you may be shy based on your personality, but there's a way you can overcome it. How do you overcome stage fright? How do you overcome the nerves, the palpitations? How do you perform very well? Let's look at a few techniques of doing that. In the next slide. The first thing you do is what? Accept it. All right? You accept it is normal. Even like I said, for the most renowned speakers that you know, the Miles Monroe, the MLKs that we talked about initially, all of them still experience that fright. Seconds, maybe in different degrees, but they still experience it. Even up till today, I still experience it. It is not every time that I come up stage and I take a mic and then I flow. Sometimes I experience that nerve. So you don't fight it. The more you fight it, the more you lose your confidence. So the first thing you do is you accept that fright is normal, even for experienced speakers. And then there are some other ways, techniques of doing it. One, you can take deep breaths to calm your heart. Take deep breaths. Or you can hydrate yourself. Before I came up stage, I asked for water, but there was no water, so I had to look for another way of doing it. One of my ways of doing this, once I come up stage, I smile. And smiles are infectious. No matter what, no matter how ice cold you're, except you meet some very difficult audiences, once you're able to smile, you break down some defenses. You relax a bit. So you hydrate yourself. When you come up stage, if it's okay, you take a glass of water. It gives you some moments to be able to take off properly. Then you try to engage the audience. You ask questions, mind-boggling questions, teaser questions here and there to ensure that the audience follow you. That technique is called feedback as a catalyst. You want to know that the audience is following you. Are we together now? You use notes. Remember I said it, use notes where necessary. And then I also talked about arriving early. You need to arrive early. It helps you garner some momentum before time. But moving forward now, we are getting close to the end of this presentation. So one thing you need to also ask yourself is, how do you start your presentation? The way you start is very important, very key. It says a lot whether you're going to gain the attention you need or you lose it the moment you begin. So you can start with an engaging or relevant story. Those stories sometimes could be anecdotes, short or relevant stories to drive a message or teach a lesson. Who remembers any of the stories that I told today? Yeah? Who? Chike. No, it's not Chike, it's Ikechukwu. What? Can we use the mic so that we... Is the mic somewhere close?
I said 2 sugar and 5 pure water.
2 sugar and 5 pure water. That's the story of Ikechukwu. So sometimes you need to start with short, relevant stories to be able to drive your message. Or you can start with a quote. Quotes are powerful. You'll be shocked how statistics help people to, gather themselves. Do you know that 99% of the children in sub-Saharan Africa do not have adequate water to drink every day? Give statistics and then let people think about what you've said. Okay, I've talked about statistics or facts. Then I mentioned vocal variety. Sometimes I've been to an event, where the audience was really, really rowdy. And I knew that if I come to start talking like this, I may not get their attention. And then I went, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the best event of your time. This is a luxurious journey through. And as I finished speaking, everybody was like, who is talking? Who is talking? And then I was able to go up stage. Then they were able to calm down. So sometimes you start with vocal variety to be able to grab your audience's attention. Sometimes you have to start with a baby voice. There's a lady that does it so well, Helen Paul. She has tatafo. She has this tiny voice. So you can try that, or you can try an emotional appeal. Won't dwell much on that technique, but these are ways you can start your presentation. These are ways you can take off with your performance to grab attention. This is about the last slide now. Let's move on. Now, how do you nail a presentation? How do you nail it? Very interesting. Very interesting. Because you can start very well and throughout the presentation you lose it. The first thing I'll say is adopt confident body language. Are we together? It might sound a bit, how is this relevant to me? It is very relevant. I know there were times we went for competitions, and then we're like the youngest people that were in that competition. And because we're young, there's a way we carried ourselves. We'll just, be coming very tiny. And when you see those older guys, they'll come, boom, boom. The first time we went for the competition, we didn't win, but we learned something. So we started telling ourselves, presence, presence. Walk like you have presence. So we'll just be coming like, as small as well we do. We'll open our chests and start walking like we have presence. We won the competition at the end of the day. I spoke much about it in the youth camp. Sometimes you need to adopt a confident body language. Just imagine I come up stage to talk to you, and I stand here, and I stand like, all right, guys, I want to talk about the art of public speaking. So public speaking is, you might just listen to me because you like my face or you've heard about me somewhere. But if you're not familiar with me, you will lose it absolutely. You need to carry yourself properly. And the second point says, use gestures and movement. Use your stage properly. There's also a technique that when you're walking across your stage, there's a way you cross your leg that shows that this guy is not confident. Let me show you an example. If I come and I'm talking to you, and this is how you need to do this, and I'm bouncing up and down. It looks like I'm pressed and I want to use the toilet. You use the right gestures. Sometimes you want to drive a message to this aisle. You talk to them. And then you move to this aisle. You focus on them. And then you move to the last aisle. And then you drive it. Are we together now? Confident body language and gestures. Then remember I talked about using your stage very well. The caveat is you need to ask, am I allowed to move around? There are some places that, the technical team will tell you, the camera doesn't cover this angle, so you may not. But if they give you an area, try as much as possible to utilize your stage. Resist the urge. This podium is a trap. Are we together? Some of us hide our stage frights and we hide some things behind this podium. Once we come here, it gives us some form of shield and covering so we can maintain here. Hello? Use your stage. Come out. Engage with the people while you're in camera, while you're in shot. Come out. Use it. It is part of your performance. Talk to these people here. Make sure you have their attention. And then you come back to your podium. Are we together? Look at great TED Talks. The greatest TED Talks that will be ever recorded. These guys take the liberty to start from the podium. And then when they're about to hit a high note, they leave the podium and they come straight. They pick someone in the audience and they talk directly to Atara. And then they tell her, this your smile is gorgeous. I'll talk to you more about it. See the way she's happy. She'll think about it today. She'll go and ask her dad about it. Use your stage properly. Except, there's a restriction. And then, number 3, which is very important. I talked about, ladies and gentlemen, all those and and arms. Please substitute them using the power of pauses. Rather than, if you are looking for the word pause, remember, pauses are powerful at the right places. The psalmist, when he writes, he says what? Selah, pause and think. He knew what he was doing. Think of it as a man eating a very delicious meal. Takes 1 spoon, 2 spoons, 3 spoons, 4 spoons, and he's eating. Hello? He pauses at some point to drink water, to savor the sweetness of that meal. Learn to use the power of pauses to drive your message. But then, there are always conditions. When I pause, for too long, I begin to look ridiculous, right? So learn to use your pauses properly. Pause at the right place. Substitute the confusion or the, you see, I said substitute it using pauses. Then one of the points says empathize or transition smoothly from one slide to another. You can transition with a story, a connecting point, one of those transitions that make your discussion or your flow smooth. There's some people that when they are moving to the next slide, there is no connection. You just, okay, now, let's talk about this. And then at some point, you'll be wondering, how does what he said 2 seconds ago connect to what he's saying now? So learn to transition smoothly. Remember, there are times when you want to speak and your audience are hungry. When you have a hungry audience, you have distractions. You have people sleeping, right? Empathize with them. Are they hungry? Watch. There's something they call read the room. Because you have an important message doesn't mean you should be in a hurry to deliver it. Read the room. When you see the mood in the room, we started with the mood check-in, right? When you see it, engage them in a game. Sometimes you may ask them to stand and stretch. It shakes off some weariness. Sometimes you might start with an engaging teaser. It may be out of what you planned, but because you empathize with them, you can connect with them and then do things that are relevant to them at that time. Don't just start. You can use visual aids and then you close with an impact. You get to the end of some messages and you're wondering, is this the end? Learn to close with an impact. You can also use your starters to close quotes, statistics, close with an impact. And let's move to the next slide. While I was preparing for this topic, I began to ask myself, why is it so important? And then I realized, you see, your voice is one of the most powerful tools given to you at birth. But then we go through life without knowing how to harness the power of your voice. You can literally transform your life and the lives of millions of people by mastering the art of speaking. When you hear magic happens in the boardroom, you wonder what kinds of magic happen. People are literally able to speak and turn no's to yeses. People are literally willing to speak and turn an angry mob to their cheerleaders. Let us learn to utilize the power of our voices. Let us learn to harness it and turn all that happens around our world for good. And with that, I close. Narendra Modi. All right. Thank you. So we can have our questions. Pardon us, we had gone quite an extent before you guys came. We talked about some very interesting things. So only the guys who were here earlier on understand Narendra Modi. He had 4 minutes standing ovation. And I appeal to them to give me a standing ovation when I'm done. But thank you very much for the ovation. If you have questions through the course of the discussion, the conversation, you can ask for clarity. And if there are no questions, I will ask you my own questions. Right? Okay, there's a question there.
Okay, my question is this. How do I ensure that I don't forget what I have practiced? Because you gave a number of examples, I think a couple of examples, where you or the character practiced to the point where they could recite the entire speech, the entire presentation, but during performance, they forgot. And that happened to me before, and I had to improvise. So how do I, because then again, there was another story you gave about Annalise Keating where she um, did the whole drive, looked at the boardroom and all that, and put herself in that situation to practice her defense. You know. So, what is the difference between what Analyst Keating did and what Ikechukwu did, and how do I use that for my own benefit?
Okay. If there are any other questions, supporting questions similar to this, we can take them. But if there are none, I'll just go straight. Okay. Similar to his question. All right, go ahead.
I also wanted to ask about when you actually reach that station of where you have, due to maybe nerves, you've forgotten everything you have planned to say. That what do you do in such a situation? What goes on? How do you continue in such a situation instead of just stopping and facing the music, or even have to leave the stage because you forgot? So what do you do in such a situation?
Okay, so okay, there's a question similar to that.
Yeah. My question is, you said using notes when you talked about prepared. I think that was when I came in. When I was in the denomination, there's this set of students passing out from the pastors in college, and they give them time to minister. Now, a certain person came, and while he was at the standing pulpit, they called his attention, and they quickly removed the note he prepared with, the note he came with. So when his attention came back, he discovered that his note was not there. But he still went ahead and carried out his ministration from detail to detail according to what he has written down in the note. Now, what am I saying now? If you prepared very well, is it that important to still come out with the notes?
Okay, so I'll start answering the questions from the sequence that were answered. One of the sequence that were asked, sorry to say. One of the things that we sometimes fail to realize is that practice or preparation, no, performance doesn't necessarily start from when you have a D-Day. All right? So to answer your question, Chukwe, make it directly. When you make an attempt, like me in primary school, and I failed, I didn't stop there. I went on, I acted a movie where I had to rehearse my lines in primary school and play a character. I started rehearsing off stage. So practice is like a lifestyle. Remember the 10,000 hour rule. It is not only on the field of play that you begin to perform. You can practice in your house with your friend, with your brother. You can practice on your own. And then you begin to perfect that skill. When you fail, you don't wait for the next time you have an outing to prepare or practice. Practice it like a way of life. This is who you are. And the more you practice, the more you get better at it. You'll fail. But if you stop there, you never get better. So keep practicing. You're in your home, you tell your mom, Mom, I want you to hear what I have to say. Shama. You say one or two things, you fail, you go back, man, I didn't get this right. You try again. You always practice as a way of lifestyle. And so when that D-Day comes, you become part and part. You're not trying to embody a different character on that day, because this is who you are. This is your lifestyle. You've been doing it. And there are some people who are really skilled. One of them is here. I was opportune to make a video for him. And at the end of the video, I had to ask a question. How were you picking that point? He had a small note by the side. And the way his eyes rolled skillfully, he would just roll it, pick the point, and keep going. I'm talking of Uncle Kayode. And he spoke for minutes. I was wondering, is there a note somewhere? And then he told me all he did was roll his eyes, pick a point, and continue. There are people who are skilled. They can just pick a point, float, and they start talking about floating. Very well. They've exhausted it, they go back, aliens, and then they continue. But if you're not skilled that way, you can take a moment. You meet a roadblock. You can pause. You ask. There's nothing that says, can I have a minute, please? Can I have a minute? You take your seat. Take deep breaths. Put yourself together. And then come back. There is no harm in doing that, except it's a competition and you're timed. I've seen people in Dragon's Den. You know Dragon's Den, right? I've seen people in Dragon's Den pitching for thousands of dollars or money. And then, okay, is that my time? Okay. pitching for plenty of money. And then when they start, their voice starts to shake. They ask for a minute. They do. Money is at stake there. They ask for a minute. They go back, get themselves. And when they come back, even the lions say, relax. Okay, we are human beings like you. Now that's when money is at stake. Then in some other instances, money is not at stake. You can ask for a minute if you're perplexed, if you don't get it right. If somebody has taken your notes, you ask for a minute. Can I have a minute, please? You go back, put yourself together, and then you come back. So you understand yourself. Do you have a sharp memory to pick points and elaborate on them on your own? Or you need notes, or you need some moment, or you need a moment to put yourself together. And remember to always practice as a way of lifestyle. Bill Gates did not start practicing because he wanted to build Microsoft. He practiced because he had the resources available to him, and he did it as a way of lifestyle. Okay? Does that answer our question? All right. Any other questions? Okay.
My question is around avoiding the trap of overconfidence. All right, so how do you, sometimes, it is personal. It's like, why do I need to practice? It's like, let me just go out there. But is there something around that one should just be aware of?
Yeah, there's something also called overconfidence. There's something called overconfidence. And one thing I try to do, and I think even experienced speakers do it, one thing they always do is they try to get feedback after an outing. They try to get feedback from honest people, not people that will hail them to the highway. They'll ask, so how was it? Did I do this? Did I do that? And one of the people that is my greatest critic is my wife. She will not spare me if the whole world claps for me and I come and ask her expecting a clap. She will tell me straight, no, you were over here. You did it. And be sure to take the feedback well. There is a trap to be overconfident, but if you're willing to take honest feedback, and you know those people that can tell you the truth, you ask them, how was it? Say, I think you could have done like this. I think you were overconfident. I think you were too reserved. You take that properly and then you drive on. It helps a lot. There may be other answers about overconfidence, but this is the one that immediately comes to mind. Okay, we're going to have more questions, if possible. Are there any questions online? Okay. Fine, so I have a question, right? I have a question, which is a situation. I like to paint scenarios. So let's assume you're called to speak to a group of people. You did your research. You knew the age distribution, their educational qualification. You did a proper research. And then you meet something unexpected. You go into the hall. They're happy when the first two speakers spoke. And then when you come, you realize that the crowd is angry. I'm not talking of managed anger. Literal anger. You see people, murmuring and grumbling. What do you do? Based on all that we've talked about. Okay. There's an answer.
What readily came to my mind was you empathize. That was what readily came to my mind. You identify with whatever may have led to that state. Oh, I said.
That's apt. That's absolutely correct. Yeah. You empathize with them, and then you take yourself away from whatever it is you have, and then you get involved in why they are like that. You have your hand raised. I thought you were raising your hand, Umama. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, so I'll just use that 1 minute to wrap up, right? One other thing you can do is also manage your emotions. There are sometimes some preachers come and people are grumbling, and then they vent. Why are you... Sometimes you learn to manage your emotions. And again, it doesn't start on the pulpit. It starts before you get there. Manage your emotions, empathize with the people you're speaking to, and then ensure that they receive the message. Or whatever it is that's making them angry, you alleviate it. All right. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was an interesting conversation. You have your hand raised. There's
There's a question online. It says, how can you tell the difference between genuine constructive criticism or feedback and feedback that is from a place of hate or bitterness?
a very good question.
It also says, please, could you share from your personal story on how you gain mastery in public speaking? Sorry, that was just two.
The second question, maybe if I meet the person, I can engage and tell more of the stories because of time. I may not be able to say it here. But for the first part, you know the people that are for you and can give you. Remember, I gave two categories. There are some that are your fans. No matter what you do, they'll clap for you. You should be wary of those ones. They are the ones that, they love you. And so when they are saying some certain hard things, they're saying it from a place of you can do better. And there are some that they don't really love you. Sometimes they even come and gather to hear and see that you failed. We saw David. He was chewing his mouth. Yes. And then that kind of person comes to give you criticism. You just smile. You know where it's coming from. So you know the categories of people. You know where to get your right criticism from. You know where to just listen and pass. All right? There's an answer here. There's an answer.
Again, I think it's also about disposition, attitude, and how we want to. I don't shy away from criticism, whether from those that, chair or those that, whatever intention, right? Because in all of these comments, whether they are coming from a right heart, wrong spirit, whatever, it's always useful, and it has proven to be useful to see them as feedback. Okay? Process it. If it's not useful, it's, discarded. But feedback, whether positive or negative, is a huge, huge, huge pool of resources for improvement. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, yes, please go ahead. Yes. Can we put it all together maybe within 3 minutes?
So one other thing that also helps is to have a sample, right? So, and if something is repetitive, so it's not only coming from brother A or sister A or sister C, so you see that repetition of certain ways that you can improve, you know that that is valid. So your sample of your feedback is also important, not just one person. So 2, 3, 4, 5 people, and then you see what is common.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. The last one, last.
Okay. Last question says, do you think going to an extent of working with a coach is a good attempt to overcome stage fright?
Absolutely. Yes. There is no skill in life that a coach wouldn't help you get better at. You need a coach. But when it comes to stage fright, remember I said there is no human being on earth that will tell you he doesn't experience it to any degree, that I just come up and I'm good to go. No, you always experience it. So no matter how much you get coaching,